welcome to In-House Connect. My name is Shai Mahani. I'm the CEO and co-founder of In-House Connect, and I'm thrilled to have you here with us today. Thank you for spending your breakfast time or your lunch time or possibly your dinner time with us. And special thanks to our sponsor, which happens to be In-House Connect. In-House Connect is sponsoring today's program because we believe in the subject, and I think it would delight our audience, frankly. And I'm delighted to have our speaker on with us today. Our speaker, Nancy Maryland, who's going to talk about how to leverage LinkedIn to build your reputation, relationships, and career for in-house counsel. I'm thrilled to have Nancy on with us today. This is our 88th event of the year, and I'm wondering, are you here for the first time? Or have you tuned into a In-House Connect webinar before? We're super lucky to have Nancy Maryland on with us today as a 2023 inductee into the LMA Hall of Fame, which is the Legal Marketing Association. This is the association that is comprised of legal marketers from law firms and other organizations, and she's a Hall of Famer. The first time we've ever had a Hall of Famer on In-House Connect. Nancy began her career in sales management and marketing in corporate America with Time Warner. She entered legal marketing as a first chair director of marketing for Baker and Daniels, now known as Faegre Drinker. She is celebrating over 20 years in business as a marketing and business development advisor, especially in content, social, and digital media, as well as personal branding. She helps lawyers learn how to integrate all marketing disciplines to grow their practices and careers. She's a frequent LinkedIn trainer, as well as a content, podcasting, video blogging, live streaming, and Zoom and virtual presentation trainer and coach. She helps lawyers learn how to use social and digital media wisely, safely, ethically, and efficiently to develop relationships with those who have an impact on the strength and growth of their careers. Again, super thrilled to have with us a Hall of Famer, a current Hall of Famer. Nancy, welcome to In-House Connect.
Thank you. I appreciate your willingness to say all of that in my introduction. You're a good friend, and I appreciate that, Shai. Thank you so much. I'm so glad to be here. I've attended a couple of these, I think, when the topic was artificial intelligence, and I noticed what a robust chat there was, which I was so impressed with. And so feel free, if you have any questions along the way, please put those in the chat or any comments about anything, concerns, whatever it might be. And if I don't catch, I will try to catch them because I have my eye. So if you see me shifting a little bit, it's only because I'm also paying attention to the chat a bit. But if I miss you, I'm sure I will definitely catch it for me. And feel free to ask those questions along the way. I want this to be conversational, and don't think that you can't step in with a question along the way, because I want to make sure that this is worth your valuable time. Nobody has extra time to come to a non-CLE event about LinkedIn and not get something out of it. So I've packed a lot into this, and what I've done is I've prepared, as I like to do, I've prepared an agenda for us. Don't let the first part about numbers scare you. I promise I won't share too many of those, but I think there are a couple that are pretty important that we do talk about. And then, as you can see, we'll talk about how LinkedIn has changed, and then some reasons why I think you should think about using LinkedIn when you do use LinkedIn. And then we'll talk about profile and presence, which I always talk about, and we'll talk about that in a lot more detail in a moment. But those are the two extremely important parts of your LinkedIn activity: a strong profile and a robust presence. So we'll talk about those. And again, ask me questions. So again, as promised, I wanted to show you a few numbers. You can see here huge growth in, it's all relative. Facebook will say they have 3 billion. That's a whole different platform. LinkedIn has always been the professional networking site, social networking site of choice. So the numbers have not always been huge like Facebook's, or what Twitter has never had the numbers that any of the others have had. But these are robust numbers. And when you could, in essence, say that almost a doubling of the numbers since 2018. You'll also start to see a pretty healthy increase from 22 to 23, and actually throughout the pandemic. I just realized I have 2 October 2020s in there, so my apologies for that. I'm not sure, that really was not done for emphasis. That was a pure mistake. But that there are over 1 billion numbers. I can't get a current number because they haven't released it yet for 24, but somebody said the other day 1.1 billion. Not sure where he got that, because I've scoured and I can't find it anywhere, but that number will come out soon, and rest assured it'll still be over 1 billion. And just in case you're curious, these are the top 10 countries for users on LinkedIn. Thought that might be interesting. China was not in the top 5 the last time I gave this presentation, which was not too long ago. So these numbers do definitely change. So the ability to connect with people all over the world is very strong. So, what about the pandemic? The pandemic started to change everything. And I don't have to tell all of you, we've all lived through it and we experienced this. In fact, there's probably some PTSD on the parts of many of us, even thinking about what we went through. But what did change is that overnight, lawyers and other business professionals kind of got nervous because they lost touch with their current clients and customers. And all of a sudden, LinkedIn became, because it's a professional networking site, became the place to be. It was a place to still stay present, still have a presence, still be able to share knowledge and to be noticed by other people. People were in home offices and they had a lot more time, which is extremely busy people having more time is hard to say, but there weren't necessarily travel times. And so people were spending a little bit more time on sites like LinkedIn. So being able to be visible was definitely something that was possible via LinkedIn. And I started to get phone calls and texts and emails from colleagues and people and non-colleagues, people I hadn't met yet, saying, my lawyers are worried because they can't get in front of the people they want to connect with. And they're starting to come to me and asking me to teach them how to use LinkedIn. Can you help? And of course, that's music to my ears. The pandemic was not, but that's music to my ears. The same with Zoom and virtual presentation coaching. Definitely picked up during that time. So it's definitely, things have changed. And I'm sure all of the powers that be at LinkedIn are quite happy about that part of the pandemic, but not the rest of it. And what's important to remember is that people didn't forget this newfound skill or this newfound place that they found to connect in LinkedIn. Again, when you see the numbers, again, the double October 2020s, when you see these numbers increasing like that through the pandemic, there's definitely something going on LinkedIn. I found this extremely interesting. There is a study that I respect a lot, and you can see Green Target up here at the top. Green Target is a research and public relations company that I like. There are a lot of them that put out statistics and surveys, and I don't pay attention to all of them because I'm not always certain that they're as grounded as they should be. And I often find things to question as I do, because that's just the way my brain, I think because I've worked around legal for so long, my brain is trained to be a little bit skeptical. So Green Target is a study that I have a lot of respect for. And you'll also notice, I'll just tell you in advance, that you're not seeing 23 numbers because they are just now releasing their latest study. And even though, and he's a good friend, John Corey, he gave me a sneak peek the other day. We spent about 45 minutes on Zoom so he could show me some of these numbers. He asked me to not release any of them because he is releasing the study next month. I can't overwhelm you with a lot more statistics because he has not released them yet, and I need to respect that. But I will tell you that these numbers are holding up. But you will see, this is all of you, in-house counsel in his study say, your colleagues' counterparts, when asked about key factors influencing your hiring decisions, then 68% of in-house counsel said that yes, they are influenced. You can see how that's gone up from pre-pandemic numbers. And then our C-suite colleagues, definitely an increase there as well. So, and again, that number, it held up in his most recent study. When asked about whether or not one's LinkedIn profile made any difference to in-house counsel and C-suites, you and your colleagues said that 60% of you are influenced on someone's LinkedIn profile. And again, a nice increase in both cases here, C-suite and in-house counsel. So I thought you might find it interesting. I'd be curious in the chat because you probably are thinking a lot of the things I think when people cite studies. Nobody ever called me. So let me know, even if you were not included in this study, or if you happen to have been, I'd love to know that. I think 1,000 in-house counsel were typically included in his surveys so that they can be statistically valid. Let me know in the chat if these numbers track with what you think, if you have been influenced by someone's LinkedIn profile, and if you think that, if we go back to that last, are you influenced by someone's connections and endorsements? I would just love to know. That'd be great for my knowledge. And I do see a question. I was curious about how persuasive the LinkedIn recommendations are. Thoughts about this? And you might have typed that just before I got to that. It's interesting. For a long time, it's a great question. For a long time, people were serious about them. And then they weren't. And people started laughing at them and saying, anybody can write a recommendation. And then you also noticed the one word, there was a time when the one word endorsements, the skills were a big deal. And we wanted people to click on those skills that we had placed on our profile. And so for a while, I think they were not taken seriously. But I've also noticed, and I think this probably backs this up, that I would say in the last 5 years or so, 5 to 8 years, I've noticed that people are taking them more seriously. People are more serious about giving them as well. And there is a way that you can actually reach out to someone and say, would you do that? I never do that to anybody because I think if they want to endorse me, then they'll offer it or they'll just do it. But maybe that's my Midwestern roots and humility, whatever. I'm not sure. But I would say, to answer your question, persuasive, I think if they're written genuinely, and along with all content on LinkedIn, if someone writes one that is genuine, one that seems to come from a real person, wasn't written by artificial intelligence, I think we can take them seriously. So, but again, it really just depends on who has written it and how it sounds. If it sounds like if it's rote and it sounds like every other recommendation anybody's ever written, then I think that will cause skepticism, definitely. I like to because I consider one of my jobs to make the most help you make the most efficient use of your time. I have boiled down the reasons for using LinkedIn into three, and it's really in a nutshell right here. To frame it, then there are three reasons, and that's to find those with whom you want to connect, to be found by those people so that you're not having to do a cold outreach with every single person you'd like to connect with, and then to turn those contacts into connections. You and I can have 5,000, and I see you're offering some thoughts here about endorsements, and I'm going to visit those in just a second, that you and I can amass 500 or 5,000 contacts in our CRM or in Outlook or in whatever database you keep, you and your companies or firms keep. But if we don't do something with them, then we just have a very interesting hobby of collecting contacts. So one of the most important things to do is to say, all right, these are the people who are most important to me. These are the people I want to get to know better and I want to connect with. And I want to turn that person, those people, from mere contacts and names into true connections. I want to connect with them. So this is LinkedIn. This is three reasons boiled down. So how do we do that? Again, in a nutshell, it is by having, I mentioned this a little bit ago, a robust profile and a meaningful presence. And when those two come together, and the presence part being best practices when using LinkedIn, then that's when you turn contacts into connections. So again, those two slides very much in a nutshell, what to think about as you're using LinkedIn. And let me go back, and because I did see, I'm not influenced by endorsements. Guy said, I'm not influenced. However, when I was a hiring manager, I was influenced by a candidate's profile. Oftentimes, hang on, let me move. I've got something in the way for some reason blocking you. I was influenced by a candidate's profile. Oftentimes didn't have a great pool of candidates, so I looked at profiles on LinkedIn. And I don't think that's uncommon. I hear that a lot. So thank you so much. I appreciate that. Let's get started. I talked about your LinkedIn profile being extremely important, and it is, because if I just taught you about the best practices, your presence, and you didn't have a strong profile, what's going to happen? Someone is naturally going to go right back to your profile to check you out if they're interested. And if they don't find the information that they came for, or it's a bare bones profile, then you've missed a huge opportunity to let someone know what it is you do, what you stand for, your experience, and a lot of other detail that we can put on our profile. So let's go ahead and talk about your profile for just a bit. And this, in a nutshell, you've probably heard people talk about the algorithms on social media. The algorithms completely computer generated. The algorithm on any platform says our computers are going to decide whose content, and they're going to say, we're going to show your content to these people because of the algorithms that we have. So this is, again, how I've boiled down the LinkedIn algorithm in a nutshell. And this is the reasoning in 4 steps, that basically LinkedIn's job is to show content, your content, to those people who care the most about it. So what they will do, what the algorithm will do is they will say, let me go find, again, this is a machine, let me go find the people who seem to be talking a lot about that subject, or they're sharing a lot about that subject, and recommend content to them. And if other connections of theirs or of yours are talking about that, they have that information on their profile, then the algorithm is going to get triggered to say, or as I like to say, it tickles the algorithm to say, I think we need to show let's say we need to show Belinda's post to more people who also care about that same topic. So that's LinkedIn's job, to match the right people with the right people and the right content with the right people. Knowing that, then we need to talk about how you can create a robust profile and a meaningful presence. And just a reminder that LinkedIn they know this, they're in a constant race with everything else you're doing, everything that's on your desk, every phone call, text, email that you're getting, every family event and life event. They know they're fighting against that. What they're going to do is they're going to try to keep eyeballs on the platform. That's social media. They all do it. They know that they want to keep you on the platform and increase the amount of time that they keep you there. And the only way that LinkedIn knows how to do that is to make sure that they are showing you and showing others relevant, intelligent content that matches what you appear to be interested in. I see Joe's had to make sure I didn't miss anybody before Joe. As lawyers, we need to be aware of his discrimination can be based on picture, yes, but most often it's age, yep. So I advise no one should have anything older than 20 years, including grad dates. In fact, in California, the trend is no dates on college or grad school. Thoughts? And you have some agreement, I see, and I agree. Ageism is real, and where it's comfortable, do exactly. I have no problem saying that I think that what Joe is suggesting and what others, it appears in California, are suggesting. Yeah, employment dates, yes. I think when it goes back so far as to say nobody cared that I worked at Taco Bell when I was 16 years old, those obviously are not going to make it to my LinkedIn profile. They have absolutely nothing to do with what I do now, and they would just make people think I was very odd for putting it there. So I think, and we can even talk about those on an individual basis. If you have questions, then just let me know. Okay. All right, great. So let me go ahead. We've talked about that. And again, this is just the part about matching your content. So let me help you get this right. And so what I want you to do is to start with keywords. And this forms the basis for what you do on your profile and your presence. What I'd like you to do is, not right now, of course, but whether it's on a piece of paper or it's digitally, then just start a laundry list of words and phrases that define you and what you do, what you're like to work with, what topics you care about, what topics your company or your firms care about, and just write, just without even worrying about it. Don't worry about a word being off base or whatever, and just write your laundry list. And then what I would do after that is to say, all right, what are the most important? And then prioritize those. So I would say, let's say you've come up with a list of 15. You're professional, you care about artificial intelligence, you care about the pharmaceuticals, you care about on and on. The geography is important to you. So Europe, the UK, what kinds of clients, all of those are definitely keywords. And we'll look at that in a little bit closer. But say out of those, what are those words and that you want people to most associate with you in the limited time that you have? And I would say pick your top 7, for example, and say these are the most important, and even rank those, because what you're going to do is you are going to then use those in different spaces on your profile. So that's my best suggestion for you when you get started, or if you're revisiting your profile, is to think about those keywords and key phrases, and then we will work with those. And again, if you already have a robust profile, then you'll want to make sure those are present. And I've already said that. And then the bonus also is that they can also, you can see here, serve as inspiration when you're thinking about what kind of content and what kind of posts to make on LinkedIn. Then if you have said, gosh, these 7 words, including these 5 topics, are what I want to be known for, then that's what you're going to be posting about or sharing about. So it becomes, those words become a driver for just about everything that you do on LinkedIn. And make it easy on yourself. I would say don't reinvent the wheel. and head over to your bio, whatever you have, wherever it is. It could be on your company's website. It could be one that you just have in your files, wherever. It could be on a nonprofit board that you sit on, that there's information about you. So don't reinvent the wheel. Just go and revisit and borrow from there. And as you can see here, and you'll notice me, I blur people out and even screen some things out because I'm huge on confidentiality. And unless someone has used me as an example, I would love for my face and my name to be shown. I tend to not do that out of respect. So that's the only reason you're seeing what you're seeing here with the blurring out. Lots of keywords and key phrases can be borrowed. Employment attorney, managing medical, recreational marijuana, employment issues, vaccine mandates. So lots of keywords and key phrases. If you look further on his bio on the website, you can see a lot more. Advising employers, compliance, medical marijuana, some of these we already saw, covenants not to compete. So lots. Again, don't reinvent the wheel. You're too busy for that. Just go ahead and visit your profile or your bio and borrow from there for inspiration. And this is just another example how you'll be surprised how your resume, your bios are filled with words that will help you get started in this. There are so many sections that we can talk about on your profile, but because we only have a little bit of time together, let's talk about the most important. And we're going to talk about banner image, headline, the about section, and the experience section. And your banner image, the very first thing everybody sees at the top of your profile, I would think of that like you do any website. When you go to someone's website, and it could be your company website, that there are images used all over. And those images are there for a purpose. They're there to connect with people who somehow resonates with. An image might be there to evoke some kind of emotion. So I want you to think of your LinkedIn banner image in much the same way. It's just a built-in opportunity to send a very quick message to people about who you are and what you do. I am not suggesting you have to put as much content into your header as I do. I am a marketer, so I will always push the envelope and test things. But I have a lot of information in mind that if people go no farther than to look at my banner image, they've gotten a pretty good idea about what I do. But I think there is a happy medium for you. For example, this is one of the standard backgrounds that LinkedIn places if you don't choose anything else. This could be anyone on LinkedIn. There's nothing special that greets people when they come. Then there's this. This lawyer cares about federal regulatory and legislative issues. The Capitol Rotunda. That's a very quick and a very important graphic to him. So that's definitely something. We found a clearer one to use, one that was a little bit sharper, but definitely something that I said, you need to keep that one. That speaks to what you care about. Then there's a lawyer who cares about energy, renewables, and transportation. Loves this graphic, loved it when we started working together. And so you can see little bits and pieces within there. This is very much his style, and it's very much about transportation. So that's an idea. Some of you have, companies or firms have standard graphics that you're being asked to use. So I never want you to think I'm suggesting you override something that's a soft mandate, but definitely take advantage of this space. And again, just a couple, this is how they can even be much simpler than those that I've shown you. For intellectual property, it could look like that or that. Again, very simple, or even much more simple than that, where it's very subtle.
People are curious, where do you find those graphics, or where do you recommend people look for those graphics for their banner image?
I use Canva, Canva, and I'm on the paid version, I think, which is maybe $12 a month, but you don't have to. And it's a great graphics for dummies, but it's become much more than that because a lot of people who are graphic designers have been saying, you know what, I'm using Canva a lot too. It is an amazing tool where you can find lots of graphics and do a lot of layout. So I would say it's graphics for people who are not graphic designers. So it's one of my favorite tools. You can use the free version. Just whatever you don't use an image that you find on Google, which I know all of, but I'm still amazed at the amount of times people say, well, I just go find one on Google. And I said, do you have rights to use that photo? And they said, I don't need them. It's on Google. And I said, yes, absolutely. Unless it's Creative Commons, you definitely have to have rights to that. This is one example. A friend of mine, Dennis Garcia, and you can see a couple things. and we're moving on to the headline, but you can see also, I wanted you to see that he's at Microsoft and he changes his often. So you can, in fact, with the last name Garcia, I forgot how many years ago it was when the White Sox had 3 Garcias on the team, and he had a picture from the back of all 3 jerseys, all 3 players, and they all said Garcia, and he's a huge baseball fan and lives in Chicago. So that was his banner image for a while. But let's talk about and move on to your headline. One of the most important pieces of real estate on your LinkedIn profile because of where it sits, and it's you in a nutshell. And again, you can see this is why I've recommended you start with the keywords and key phrases, because you're definitely going to use them. Dennis's is short and to the point. You actually have more characters, and I'll show you what that looks like in a moment. He has chosen to just hit it hard right from the top. He let people know exactly what he does and also some information about him. You saw this lawyer before. This is the one where I showed you this graphic, this banner image. And he's definitely taking advantage of all of the characters that have been given to him. And these grew very much out of the keywords and key phrases that we worked on together. And again, with the prioritization of them, it definitely helps place these in the right place. You will have some people tell you, oh, you know what, just create a real craftsy and a real artistic and a real fun headline, because people love that kind of thing. I like fun, but I'm also a realist, and I know how busy people are, and I know that you only have so many seconds to catch them in the single digits, that number of seconds to catch them before they decide they don't want to be there and they keep scrolling or they click off. So what I want to do is I want people to have your information in a nutshell as quickly as possible, because what they're seeing at the top is an invitation for them to consume more of you by scrolling down. So we always want to do things that encourage people to continue to scroll, something it's called scroll stopping or thumb stopping if they're on mobile. Again, you have 20, as you can see here, you have 220 characters. This happens to be mine. I like to separate them with, I think that's called a pipe. If it's not, tell me in the chat. And I used to have LinkedIn Coach for Lawyers, but I was asked by LinkedIn to not say that anymore. So I changed mine to I teach lawyers how to use LinkedIn effectively. That's still showing with the truncated number of characters that show when people come to my profile. So I'm still, but I know I will tweak it just to make sure it's as punchy as possible and it communicates to people as soon as possible. I'm just looking quickly. We use our company's logo. It just depends. If your company likes that, then I would touch base with your marketing communications people and say, is it okay if I do that? They will probably have some thoughts about how they want you to position that. But that's a conversation that I would definitely have. There's absolutely nothing wrong with it. So moving on to the About section, then the goal for this section, because as you can see, there are 2,600 characters that LinkedIn gives us. It's a lot of room to tell people about you. One of the goals, and you will see more in a couple different places on LinkedIn, on your profile and on posts. The algorithm is just waiting for people, you or others, to click on that, and it knows when you do. When it detects a click, it knows that there's something interesting going on. So, for example, when you're writing your About section, I always say when I work with people, let's make sure you say something in the very first sentence that is interesting or compelling enough. Obviously, don't fabricate it or don't make it more exciting than it is, but say it in such a way that people will think, oh, that's interesting, and they'll click to see more. And then what happens is that it uncovers the rest of your About section, which is very much what I want to see happen. Yeah, it's just what I just said. They won't keep scrolling unless they see something right up front. So I say, let's give it to them and let's take advantage of the About section. And again, this is just another example. You will hear me say many times, I love the use of bullet points and white space, probably more white space than you are used to using when you put a body of copy together, because people's eyes and brains like it when they're given a break, and white space on a page is a break. It helps them skim more, and people are skimmers. So if they're skimmers, then let's make sure your content is definitely laid out so that they can read it easily. And they're different just through keyboard. I'm on a PC, but when I hit the Windows icon and a period, I'm given all different emojis that I can use. I'm sure that's where these came from. You could use dashes if you wanted, whatever you might do. I would, if you use traditional bullet points, LinkedIn doesn't give us editing tools. I would draft it in a Word document with bullet points, copy it and paste it over, and the bullet points will be there, oddly enough. But you can see this is very easy to look at. For the skimmers, their eyes probably go to these parts here, these parts here. And then what's interesting is that if they're reading something that they find interesting, they may very well go up and read more of the information. And again, he's using some personality here at the end. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. Again, on your about section, I recommend that at the end, you, again, go back to your list of keywords and key phrases. I like ending with a bulleted list of those keywords and key phrases. For the true skimmers that end up on your profile, their eyes are going to be drawn to that bulleted list, like I just talked about a moment ago. So leave them with the summary of you, again, you prioritized them, the list of keywords and key phrases. All within, of course, those 2,600 characters. LinkedIn won't let you save it if it has too many characters, so there's no chance of going over that amount. We already talked about this, bullet points, white space, headings. Always first person because it's social media. It's more conversational. So it's you talking to someone versus when someone writes about you or writes your bio on your company's website, that's more formal. Or when you're on a nonprofit board, that's someone writing about you. But this is your profile. So I would always do it. In first person. We've just been talking about this the whole time. If people come out of their way to come to learn more about you, then let's make it easy for them by laying copy out. You can see this, just another example. This one is mine. I like headings. And I know caps typically mean when you're writing something to someone that you're yelling at them. This is not a text to someone or an email. I like this because I think it helps people find the section that they are the most interested in. And if you're not comfortable with caps, I will never fault you for not using them at all. But I like them because I think they're easy to find for people. Again, make it easy for them. You can see, this is from another lawyer. Again, he started with his list of keywords and key phrases that we worked on. And you can see that they show all throughout his profile. The algorithm likes this. The algorithm, as we talked about, definitely is going to use this. And this is what I talked about a moment ago, the list of specialties, if you will. I know specialties is not a good word for you to use as lawyers, but you can use practice areas. You can use a lot of different words as a heading there. But this is sort of the laundry list of you, again, in a nutshell. And I know that these are never clickable links within an about section, but I thought I would put it in there anyhow, because if someone sees that I have a resource for them, they may reach out and ask me for it, or if they look up into my contact section, they'll find the link there. So again, that's just something I did. This is that same lawyer from above with all the keywords, key phrases, where he's just put the laundry list of the keywords and key phrases that we worked on together at the very end. It's the last thing people see in that about section. And then the experience section. The goal, again, like it is in the about section, is for it to be as robust as possible and to give information to people so that it's helpful to those who are coming there to learn more about you for whatever reason. And you all know the reasons you want to be on LinkedIn, whether it's just for education, to connect with people, whether it's a career move, whatever it might be, those reasons much better than I do. But what we want to make sure is that we give people the information they came for. And you've worked hard. So let's go ahead. We're given 2,000 characters. Again, here's that see more. LinkedIn will only show 2-ish lines, and that even changes sometimes from year to year. When I log into LinkedIn on any given day, there are changes. So I always consider it my job to keep as up to date on those as possible for you. But You want people to click on see more so that they read the rest of it. So again, you just make sure that you start with something that tells people what you do up front. And it's, again, an invitation to continue. You can see my friend from several slides ago, Dennis Garcia at Microsoft. LinkedIn does a nice job when you're at a company for a length of time. And they didn't used to do this. It was really, they used to show these as Microsoft and then left again, and then Microsoft again. They finally started to thread positions within a company. So they've made it very, very easy for people to look at. And again, in the experience section, the clicking on seeing more, it's just like the about section. They won't unless they see something up front, unless they really have the interest, the keen interest, and they're going to click on see more because there's definitely something they want to learn. But again, let's give it to them. Go ahead and take advantage of those characters. There are going to be positions, potentially some older positions where you think, I don't have 2,000 characters to talk about what I did there, which is okay. My encouragement is just to give some explanation about what you did there, things that people might care about if they decided that they wanted to look at your profile. And then moving on to the experience section, there are 3 parts, but let's just talk about 2 of them today, the title and the description. In the description, you can see that this part here, number 1, is your title. And then this is the description. This is very similar comments as I made about the about section, that they've given us a lot of room to talk about what we've done. So again, this is what that looks like. I went backwards instead of forwards. And another version of your about section. People have just come here to learn more about you. So why don't we, and they're in essence, they're checking you out. They want to know if you're worth their time. If for whatever reason, they're vetting you for some reason. They're trying to learn something about you. So what they're trying to decide in their minds is if you are up to the task. And that task might be as simple as, I just want to get to know this person better. It doesn't have to be as something as lofty as, I'm trying to hire somebody, so let me go learn let me go check out what's on their profile. It might just be they want to connect with you for whatever reason. You looked nice, you looked kind, you looked knowledgeable in someone's comment section of a post. It could be as simple as that, but it's a constant job to do that. If we go back to the title, then we have 100 characters, and most people don't realize that. And so what happens is that when you fill out your LinkedIn profile, LinkedIn will prompt you for some information, one of those being your title. And it might be partner, it might be general counsel, it might be whatever it is that you happen to use on a regular basis. And then LinkedIn just puts that in your experience section. But I encourage you to expand a bit and use more of that information. Again, giving people what they came there to find. And in the description, again, the part below, 2,000 characters, I would say go ahead and use those and help people understand what you do. So again, we've talked about that. I would say, again, just like above, don't reinvent the wheel. Look at your firm, your company bio, and see what information is already there, and then just borrow from it, just making it first person so that people feel that more personal connection to you. And we've already shown you that. Now, your LinkedIn presence. Again, I talked about those are those best practices for your use of LinkedIn on an ongoing basis. I could probably give you 25 of them. I'm not, don't worry. We don't have time for that, but I will give you some of the most important. And again, best practices for how to build your reputation and your relationships. With just keeping this as a reminder, these are the reasons for using LinkedIn, at least the reasons I've boiled them down into. It's important to remember that LinkedIn, and I've talked about this several times when I've talked about creating everything in first person, it's a social networking site. It's not just a broadcasting channel. When you interact with other people, you will definitely be more memorable because it's somewhat similar to going to a business after hours or some company function. And if somebody came in and just started talking to everybody about what they did for a living and why they were special and what their experience was, that would get probably old and maybe a little bit boring very fast. But if that same person interacted with people and asked them about themselves, and when someone made a comment to them, they commented back and asked them the same question about them, that's when that's when those connections are made. So just very important to remember that. And let me check the chat just to make sure. Shy, I know I'm being cautious about time. Quick answer to Sky, only one profile. And I would like to talk to you more about that. But yes, even if you have two occupations or two different things that you're doing, I would stick with one profile. But again, I would love to talk to you more about that because LinkedIn doesn't like it, number one. And that's the last thing I want to do is to see anybody kicked off of LinkedIn for reasons that didn't have to happen. Just to keep this in mind when you're interacting with others, your goal is to add value to other people. And it's, of course, to share your knowledge and to share what you care about and what your company cares about. But those who are more memorable are those who are saying, gosh, I'm scrolling and these are some of the posts I'm seeing. This person is somebody I definitely care about. My relationship with that person I care about. I'm going to stop. I'm going to slow down and I'm going to interact with their post because I want to add some value to their time on LinkedIn as well. Because when you comment on someone's post, the likelihood of your connections then seeing that same post goes up. So you've done that person a favor because you've exposed them to your connections as well. So always think about, gosh, how can I add value to someone else on LinkedIn? That's what I just said in a nutshell. It's you're amplifying someone else's voice and reputation, which is wonderful. Again, people don't forget it when you do that because people are in such a hurry that they often skip that opportunity and they just post their own content and they go along their merry way. And people are like, oh, okay, that's nice. That person's never, and when I've interacted on their content, they've never come around and interacted with any of mine. And people love it when it's a gift when people take the time to do that. So when commenting, obviously on posts of people you would like to get to know better. And I would say try to use more than just the obligatory. Sometimes it's real easy just to say, oh, congratulations, or great thoughts. And sometimes that's really all that we have to say. So I'm not saying don't ever do that, but when you do have the time to say, something a little bit more that shows that you've given some thought to what they've actually posted and you've added your perspective or maybe even quoted back a little bit of it to them, then again, it's a gift to someone that you took the time to do that. And people don't forget that. And also, it shows that you've read their post instead of just looking at the first line, going down and making a comment. And again, people are in such a hurry. That's often what happens. Don't be afraid to show your personality. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. You can show that, or you can see that here in a comment. Drew said in response to this about thanks to everyone who joined us to celebrate our office opening in Naples. And Drew said, opening a Florida location during the heart of Cleveland's winter is ingenious. Congrats. So again, that's not a sense of humor necessarily. It is and it isn't. It's just showing personality and it's just relaxing enough to say, you know what, this is really just a conversation and having it publicly in essence. So don't be afraid to do that. And then I just wanted you to see that a little bit bigger, depending on what size device you're on. I didn't know if you would be able to see that. So that's what that is. And again, help to establish relationships with the people that you care about. It also helps you to build your reputation because the more you share content in the topics that you care about, that you are known for, that you want people to know about you, go back to your keywords again, keywords and key phrases, including those topics, then people are going to start to associate your name with those topics. That is what we all want, is to say when somebody starts to have a conversation about a particular topic, then to have your name come up and so that in essence you're mentioned to other people or you're called to the table or brought into those discussions, that's huge. So that's what's great about posting content and sharing content that has to do with topics that you care about. This is exactly what I just said. Sometimes I get ahead of myself. And whose content should you share? Your colleagues, others in the company, you can share their LinkedIn posts that are on your company's business page. Other people, not necessarily in your company or firm, any companies, causes that you care about, again, not-for-profit boards that you might sit on. It's okay to share content like that because it shows people the human side of what you do. Not that practicing law is not a human side, it is, but people have this outlandish notion sometimes that lawyers are very serious people and are not human. And I think I've worked around lawyers for over 20 years, and nothing could be farther from the truth. I wouldn't still be part of this industry and profession if I didn't believe that. So that just shows the human side of what you do. And again, share what you read outside of LinkedIn. And again, that's just to get in the practice of making a note when you're just reminding yourself. When you're on mobile, you might read an article when you have several news sources and you think, gosh, this is interesting. If you took the time to read the whole thing and it's within an area you care about, then chances are pretty strong that your connections are going to care about it too. And we can talk about the penalties, the algorithm penalties that exist when you post an actual link, which do exist, unfortunately. And we can talk about a few ways around that, but I'm not saying don't ever post a link. We'll talk about that in a moment, that the algorithm is very finicky when it comes to people leaving the platform. And I would say when you do share other people's content, always preface what you're sharing and let people know why you're sharing it. I thought I'd share, for example, with this, I just read this and think it's important because election interference, I'm just making this up on the fly, election interference is real and you need to be aware of this. So I wanted to share this article with you so that you're in the loop. It can be as simple as that. Why did you read it? Why did you think it was interesting? That's all that you need to share. It could be a sentence, it could be 3 sentences, but you're helping people connect the dots and you're helping your connections make the best use of their time by helping them realize why they should click to read that a little bit more. And this is what I just mentioned about the algorithm. As I said at the end, I don't like that we have to test this, but we do. But LinkedIn will penalize exposure when we put a link in a post. Again, I will not tell you not to do that. I did it this morning. I just opened registration for a LinkedIn course that I have, and I went ahead and posted the link. I tested it, and I'm going to be watching the numbers all day, and for the next several days. I also then turned around just to see what the algorithm would do, and I posted, again, just the content of the post with a graphic, and I put the link in the first comment. Again, I don't like that. I think it's sloppy. It's what LinkedIn has forced us into because they deprecate the exposure of our posts when we put external links in it. Again, they want people on the platform. But again, please don't think I'm telling you to never do that. I just test it every once in a while. And your community may be much different. The algorithm may be triggered by your content. And you may say, that's crazy. What Nancy says crazy. It's working for me. So I always love to test. I would say I like to test things. I like to break things so that you don't have to. So that's why I'll do some weird things like posting back to back just to see what the algorithm does with it. And then, of course, finally, share your own content. I only mention it last because when you have done all of these other things and you've shared other people's content, you've interacted with them, you've added value, what you've done is you've built up social equity, if you will, in those relationships so that when you do share your own content, those people are going to be much more likely to say, oh my gosh, Nancy and Sky, they've been sharing my content and they've been interacting with me in my posts. Why would I not go back and do the same thing for them? So the law of reciprocity in social media definitely exists. I'm not saying that's the only reason to interact with other people so that they do it for you, but it's just something that happens. It's just a natural occurrence. I would also say when there are people who are extremely important to you and who you want to connect with, go to their profile and turn on the notification bell. And that's what this looks like. That's why I put 2 big pink arrows here that you definitely want. If you click on that, they won't know it. Paul doesn't know that I've done that. But what that's telling the algorithm is I want to see whenever Paul posts. So if there's somebody that's important enough for you to see all of their posts, then you'll definitely want to turn on that notification bell. It's not foolproof because I know I've turned on the notification bell for people and the algorithm isn't showing me all of their posts. But for the most part, it's much better than not having it on. So again, just do that for people you care about. When you get a notification, that someone whose notification bell you've turned on has posted, I would say go to their profile, scroll down to their activity section, and then look at their posts and see what you can add value to. Then when you get a notification, it's going to tell you, it's going to take you right to their post. But I would encourage you to go down to the rest of their posts and say, oh, you know what, this one's interesting. This is within an area that I care about and that my company cares about, or for whatever reason. I'm going to click on that. I'm going to click on show more, and I'm going to interact with that post or see if there's something I can interact with. You can also tag, and I put the @ sign there because if you haven't done that, then if you put the @ sign before, for example, Nancy Merland, then it becomes a live link and I'll get a notification that you tagged me. So let's say you're sharing something that Vasco wrote, and Vasco's here in the chat. Thank you for giving me your name for a moment. Then you're sharing something that Vasco wrote and you tag him. And you just say, thanks for inspiring this post today, or thanks for writing this. I'm sharing it with my people, because my connections, because. So again, you've given Vasco credit. The tagging alerts them that they're being mentioned on LinkedIn. And it also invites them to come back to your post and to comment on it. So again, you've brought him and you've brought Vasco, and you've probably brought some of Vasco's connections over to your post as well. So a lot going on in that very simple act of tagging a person and organization when you're sharing. I'm typically asked about hashtags. They come in and out of vogue depending on the year and the decade. It used to be that hashtags were everything. And they started on Twitter. Twitter didn't start them, users started them. Realized that if they put the # and a word, that would make it an active link. And Twitter, of course, then everybody started to do it. And they still exist as a thing on Twitter. They still exist on all social media. Then LinkedIn got rid of them for a long time and said, we're not looking at them. They don't mean a thing. We're not using them in the algorithm. I continued to use them because I thought, okay, what's going to happen if some of them are being used and they're not hurting anything, especially when you're just using 2 to 5 of them. Sometimes, again, I will push the envelope and I will test a few more just to see if they hurt me at all. They don't seem to hurt me at all, but I don't do that very often. So again, 2 to 5 of them related to what you're posting. And the algorithm might pick up on those to say, gosh, if you've put hashtag intellectual property, then the algorithm is going to say other people who tend to care about intellectual property, who are your connections, need to know about this post. So the likelihood of them showing it to those people who care about that hashtag, in essence, that topic, the likelihood of them seeing it goes up. There's no guarantee. All of our connections will never see everything that we post because LinkedIn can't. We would have thousands of posts in our feed every day, and so they have to find a way. We are again in an era where LinkedIn is saying that they're not paying attention to hashtags. I am, again, as I mentioned at the start, I'm a true skeptic. I don't know that I'm buying that yet. So I would say, go ahead and continue to use them. You're not hurting yourself. I've not seen any comment that has said LinkedIn is going to penalize you using them. When that changes, then I will share that. But right now, that's definitely not the case. So here definitely is the bottom line, that LinkedIn has become even more important since the pandemic started, and your clients, your customers, others who you want to get to know are extremely busy people. So it's important to complement your existing networking practices, those things that you like to maybe do in person, if you do like to do that. Many people don't, and that's even changed, I've noticed, since the pandemic, that many people are just perfectly happy doing all of their networking online virtually. Some people still love to do it in person. No one's right, no one's wrong. It's just what's right for that person. So to find a way to complement those efforts by being on LinkedIn, having a presence and interacting with people, so that content that you post is there 24 hours a day. So it's there even when you're not. And I think that's a really efficient way of networking, which is why I remain extremely bullish on the use of LinkedIn. So that is definitely, that's my bottom line for you. And I am here. Let me see, how's our time? We're at 1:01. I'm here for any questions that you might have.
So Nancy, first
Shy, I
of
tried to
all,
go
thank you so much.
fast.
You did a great job. We went around the world in a little under 60 minutes, or around the LinkedIn world in 60 minutes. So a couple of things. I have a number of questions queued up. Before we get to the questions, I want to say thank you. And folks, if you enjoyed the content, let Nancy know in the chat. Before we get to the questions, I know you have, right, registration is open, LinkedIn course for lawyers, if you want to talk about that, and then we'll tackle the question. Does that sound good, Nancy?
Absolutely. Yeah. My course, I'm always excited when I open registration for it. It's cohort driven and I just opened registration yesterday and I will close it next Friday, the 18th. And what I do is I am going to pre-record because I update them every time I launch it. And there will be lessons, small bite-sized lessons so that if you only have 5 or 10 minutes to learn, and I just go more in depth about all of this and lead you right through all the things that I've been talking about. So I release topics, lessons every week at the close to the start of every week so that you can work on those and watch those whenever you'd like. And I'll even give you some worksheets that will make some of this a lot easier. And then I will also host live coaching and Q&A office hours on a regular basis so that if you want to come and say, all right, I'm behind, can I catch up on, I know you just posted a lesson on whatever keywords. Can you talk me through the keywords? I just don't have time to look at the lesson today or this week. And absolutely, I'm there to talk about anything that has been released in the course or to take a look at something. If you've written a headline, for example, then that's what live office hours, coaching office hours are for. So I do that. So that's why it's a hybrid online and live coaching course. But there's a lot of information. I've answered a ton of questions on the information page that Shai is going to be sharing in the chat. And it's just LinkedIn course, linked, not LinkedIn, not allowed to do that, linkedcourse.com. Lots of answers to a lot of questions there, but please let me know if I have not answered a question that you might have. I'd love to have you.
All right.
We start the week after then. Registration closes the 18th and we start right in the week after.
Okay, awesome. So if you want a
Thanks,
deeper
Shai.
dive how to use LinkedIn more effectively, you can sign up for the course. On to questions, and we have a number of questions. So, and I'm going to sum up this question. There are a lot of people out there who are more experienced and who have, I guess, experienced age-related discrimination. Maybe they omit. What are your thoughts on omitting your class year from your resume, your formal resume, and omitting that from your LinkedIn profile? I guess it's probably harder to do that with LinkedIn because you have your work experience. It displays how many years you've been practicing. But curious your thoughts on that. There's a number of people who are obviously having a tough time, who are more experienced, and think that's working against them.
Yeah, and I'd say we were able to talk about this just a little bit, but when it came up, but definitely ageism is real. And if that's something, if you're seeing something that you think is too far back and that you sense people are holding against you, then act accordingly. You can, yes, it is real. And you will never hear me say, and I'm not 22 years old myself, so you will never hear me say that is not a valid concern and that people do not judge because many do. So if you have to adjust something that's on the former end of things that you're listing, I wouldn't leave important positions out if you think that is going to help people learn something really important about you. But I'm with you. If you feel like there's something you need to omit, and I'd be happy to, we can even talk about that on a case by case basis. But if I was to give you a broad answer, I would say I respect that, and I think you just need to do what you need to do.
What are your thoughts on listing like an X law firm or an X company on your headline? And I've seen this around X Oracle or X Meta or X Skadden. How do you feel about that?
I think it can be a credibility builder. Absolutely. So I would say when you're coming up with your list of keywords, and if that's something that you think people will judge you favorably by, make sure that's in your list of keywords and key phrases and use it. Use it in a couple different places. I've seen that on headlines too. And for some people, I've even seen it with, there are some firms and companies that have such strong reputations and brands that it is in the head, that's in the headline. And I think that's okay in those cases. If it's something that doesn't necessarily serve you well and really doesn't serve a purpose of strengthening a headline or the particular section, I would say don't worry about it. But in many cases, and you're probably asking because you have one that is a credibility builder, I would say go ahead and include it.
Do you have any advice for people who are between jobs or are looking for jobs. Let's say you're just fully between, you have that open, do you like that open to work banner? Do you recommend other language or tactics?
The open to work banner, and you're talking about the one that you can add that then circles your,
Yeah.
I'm okay with those. I don't know that at the level that all of you are in your careers, I don't know that that would be the first thing I would recommend for you. There is linked, there is a choice in experience. There is a choice, and I don't remember what the words are right now. There is a choice of wording that you can put and add a particular experience that shows that you're in between positions. You could even consider that. But I think recruiters and headhunters are going to be, the algorithm is probably going to show you to more of them if you do things like adding that. So if that's important to you, then I would say go full tilt and add all of those tools. But I think there are many, again, I'd have to look on a case by case basis, but I don't know that I would say that would be the first thing I would recommend to professionals.
Interesting.
I'm not judging anybody because of it. I'm just saying it sends a very strong message of being between positions. If that's not something you want to scream at people, that may be a better way of saying it. If you don't want that to scream out at people, I would say don't use one. If you do want people to know that, go ahead and use it. And I won't, and I'm not judging you because of that. So that, apologies if I made it look like there was something less than about that, because that's not what I meant at all.
Yeah, there's pluses and minuses to using it, I
Yeah.
think is what you're saying. Let's switch gears slightly and talk about ideas for content. People, a lot of people who tuned in, they want to post on LinkedIn. They don't know what to talk about. They don't want to be personal. They also, it's when you post on LinkedIn, even if it's like a good topic, it's professional, you're still taking a risk, right? And you're vulnerable if nobody likes it, if maybe people receive it poorly. What's your thoughts on sharing content on LinkedIn, posts or pictures or whatever?
Well, LinkedIn has evolved a couple things. If you're sharing professional content, I wouldn't worry about being judged, because if that content isn't interesting to somebody, the algorithm's probably not going to show it to them in the first place. So those who would judge may never see that post. There may be people who are definitely interested in that professional content. And again, if it's important enough for you to establish yourself as someone who cares about or is knowledgeable about a particular topic, then I think we just have to work really hard on helping you get past being worried about people judging you for that, because it's too important to your career and to the professional perception people have of you to share important information like that. Where people are really worried these days is, oh my gosh, I'm seeing a lot of personal stuff. And it's becoming Facebook. And that's probably the one I've heard the most. It's becoming Facebook. And I think you just have to do what feels right to you. As people go, when that first started, and I first started to see that and that was pre-pandemic, when all of a sudden, it was interesting. I started to see in a lot of groups I was in and on Facebook for different interest groups and courses I've taken and a lot of different reasons. I started to see people say, hey, have you been on LinkedIn? Have you spent any time over there? It's great. And I'm getting great reactions. And I often to myself smiled, grinned, and thought, yeah, it's been that way for a long time, but welcome. So what started to happen is that's when a lot of that casual content started to come over. Facebook started to make Facebook business pages really hard to surface, and that content was dying on the vine. So people were struggling to find a way. That's when a lot of that casual content came over. And at first I was like, oh, this is just not the place for that. Come on, this is our professional network. Don't ruin it. And I was not a big fan. I have softened a bit, and I'm okay as long as it doesn't cross that line of, whoa, that was way too much information. And it probably would make everybody squirm because it's a little bit too personal or a little bit too graphic. Now, if it's cause related and it still makes people uncomfortable, that doesn't mean that doesn't mean it's a bad idea, because some things today, some topics that are causes and are important enough to people still deserve to be shared. So again, I just think it depends on the topic or how casual the post is. If you're thinking about, gosh, I took the day off the other day because I wanted to spend the day with my parents for whatever reason. I'm treasuring these days that I have with them, and I hesitate to take too much time off to do personal things like this, but I'm so glad I did. And look what I got to do with them, and share a wonderful picture with them, or I brought them into the office or whatever it might be. I am definitely softening. I have definitely softened to some posting like that. I would always say, don't let it dominate your feed. Don't let it dominate your activity section when somebody scrolls down and says, "Oh, what's been going on?" Oh, one personal post after another. I don't get it. So I would say use them judiciously. Make sure you're still professional about them. And if anything gives you an ick factor in your tummy, that's your clue. Don't do it. Or if you're thinking about posting something like that and you just want some feedback, you know where to message me and just say, have I crossed the line? Then we can talk again. It's really, some of it just depends. If you don't like what you're seeing in your feed and there's too much of that, you can always go up to the three dots on any post and tell LinkedIn you want to see less of something. And that will tell the algorithm, no more of that. Please stop.
I love it. We have a respectful disagreement from Amy in the chat,
Right?
which we appreciate respectful disagreements at In-House Connect. If you post something that somebody's telling you should think about taking down, probably other people think that way too. And you got to thread the needle wisely and thoughtfully. Everybody has their own opinion, and you got just have to do what you think is right. What do you
Well,
think, Nancy?
yeah, that kind of goes back to what I was just saying, that sometimes there are causes that do make people uncomfortable. And my comment there was to that I wouldn't tell you to hold back on that just because it makes people uncomfortable, because there are some causes that need to be talked about. For example, there was a legal technology conference that started to get a reputation for a lot of really inappropriate things happening to women. And it was either earlier this year, I think it was still this year, or maybe last,
This year, I
that,
know which one you're talking about.
yeah, and people started to post about it because they had just had enough and they were being taken advantage of and didn't even want to go to this conference anymore. You have to start to have a conversation about something like that and its appropriateness to post, because sometimes you have to think about yourself, is it ever going to change if I don't say something? There are professional ways to say things and to disagree with people. So I think it just depends on the topic. So Amy, I don't know that we're in complete disagreement, and hopefully I've answered, hopefully we're not that far off on our perspective on that. If I've misread you,
Yeah.
please correct me in the chat.
I like what Nancy said. If I wouldn't share it at a networking event in real life, then I won't post it online. That's a
Oh,
great
absolutely.
rule, and I think it
Absolutely.
makes a ton of sense.
Yeah, I
So
just
next
agree.
question, and this will wrap up, which has been a wonderful program. I heard, as the question is, I heard the more contacts you have or the more connections you have on LinkedIn, the more likely the algorithm will promote your profile in search or promote your posts. What's your thoughts on that? Is it true? Do you recommend cold connecting with lots of people, or real connecting? Maybe the more, the better.
Definitely. I mean, I'm not a big fan of cold connecting when people can't connect the dots back to a relationship with you. So there really has a couple parts to this, to your question, that when someone, let's say they say, like you send them a connection and they turn it down, and then LinkedIn, they come right back with a little message bar across the top of it and says, do you know? And if you click on, I don't know, Nancy, then LinkedIn is definitely not going to be happy with me if they see that pop up too much. So if I cold call too much, and I don't cold call, but if I cold call too much, people I've never met, and people click that enough, there is a chance that I'm going to get suspended from the platform for a while. LinkedIn this last year has no qualms about suspending accounts for various reasons. So I don't mess with things like that. A lot of people don't care. They're using artificial intelligence and they're scraping content off LinkedIn, and they're just automating cold calling, which does drive me crazy because that's not the professional network that most people want it to be. Number of connections, I think we suffer from, or we risk connecting with people that aren't meaningful to us. And people
Mhm.
who have just reached out because they might have just seen us somewhere, or again, artificial intelligence machines have said, oh, here's a keyword. I get them all the time for people who think I'm a lawyer and they say, in your law practice, I'll get, in your law practice, you need to start looking at on and on. Or, you know what, I'd love to help you with social media. It'll be good for your law practice. That's a machine action when somebody hasn't taken the time to even look at my profile. Do you know what that says to me about that person? It's not positive. I don't hate them. That's, it's the first world problems, but it's not going to make me want to build a strong connection with them. So I am not a for the numbers person at all. I think the algorithm is going to pay much closer attention when we have meaning, and it's going to make sense to the algorithm when there's something that we have in common with the people we're connecting with. And then when we post content, what if we have 10,000 people who have nothing to do with what we do? The algorithm is not going to show your content to all those people because it's not going to make sense to the algorithm that those people should see your, whatever the topic is, X, Y, and Z topic, piece of content post, because those people have not indicated they're interested in it. So it would be a full-time job for you to connect with that many people who are that meaningful. It's easier to do, and let's say you're presenting somewhere and you can all of a sudden have 300 new connections because you've in essence presented to them, you've met them at a conference perhaps. That's a little different. That's an easier way to amass, but those are meaningful connections. Those are people you have something in common with. So I would say I'm not necessarily a big fan of worrying about triggering the algorithm with thousands of connections.
Yeah, that's why I like to encourage people here to connect with each other. You're all usually in-house legal professionals or in-house counsel, and I've just tons of people have made valuable connections. I like
Right.
that. I agree with you. Cold connecting is not a great way to to build a network or
Right.
reach max visibility on LinkedIn. I think thoughtful posts will do well, and just trust that other people feel the same and will find value in your content. And close your eyes for the first 4 hours and then check it, and you'd be surprised, pleasantly
Yeah.
surprised
Yeah.
by the results.
And leave it alone. Don't touch it for the first, don't, if you have a mistake, it's a very odd thing, like having to leave the link in the first comment. If we allegedly, when we touch a post, even to go in and correct it within the first hour, the algorithm will ding that. It makes LinkedIn think, oh, we've shared it with a bunch of her connections, and then she went in and changed the content because they don't know exactly what I've changed. That's deceiving to the people who have interacted with that content. It's no longer what we shared with them. So they don't like it when posts are edited early on. The algorithm loves it when there is a lot of interaction within the first hour. So let's say your company is launching a new product line or whatever that might be, then those who care about that and are on LinkedIn, I would say help each other come to know when big announcements like that are happening. Because, and I would never ask people to interact disingenuously if they have nothing to do with that new product launch. But the more interaction there might be on your post within the early minutes and hour of it being posted, that's going to tickle the algorithm as well to say, whoa, something's going on over here on Shai's post. We better show it to more of his connections. So they'll look at Shai's posts in layers. They'll show it to some of his connections. They'll see how it does. And then depending on that, they may show it to even more of his connections.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Always love when that happens. So we're going to wrap up here. Thank you so much, Nancy. Any final remarks before we sign off?
No, I'm just so thankful that you've invited me to do this, and I'm really excited and impressed with the chat. I've never seen chat like this except when I come to your webinars and your programs, and it's so much fun. And I can't wait to go back and read everything. I would love to have you in my course, again, linkedcourse.com. I saw a question in the chat that somebody wanted to talk about working more one-on-one, my email, nancy@merlandmarketing.com, would be an easy way for us to connect and talk about that. But I'd love, of course, I'd love to work with you either way.
All
But
right,
thank
beautiful.
you.
Desi said it the best. The seminar is a treasure trove of practical and useful information. Thank you.
Thank
So
you. It's
Desi said
nice.
it the best.
I
Yeah,
love
so
that. That
thank
makes me feel good. Thank you so much.
so it's our pleasure. Thank you for a great webinar. Thanks again, Nancy. Wonderful. I'm glad we finally got to do this. Thank you
I am too.
everybody for tuning and for your wonderful participation in the chat. You can reach out to Nancy directly, or we will connect you. We have a number of people who are interested in learning more about the course. Looking forward to
Good.
facilitating those connections. If your folks are in Denver, look forward to seeing you tonight. And if not in Denver, In-House Connect coming to a city near you soon. Stay tuned for that. I hope everybody has a wonderful Wednesday, a great week, and I'll see you next week with more In-House Connect. Take care, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Shai. Appreciate you all.